Rade, everybody, welcome to today's discussion and talk. I was thinking of opening with a little invocation. So it's a kind of prayer, you could say, which kind of invokes the right consciousness and deities to be present in the discussion. So I'll just sing it to myself, and you can sing along or whatever. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Alright, cool. So, as you can see, today's discussion in the headline is going to be a little bit about how to approach this holy name, this Maha mantra, this Hare Krishna mantra, or any really mantra referring to any of the deities of Krishna or God or Vishnu when you are doing mantra meditation. So, yeah, if you would like to know a little bit more about, how do we approach these sacred mantras, how do we approach the holy names in a kirtan, in japa meditation, if you're someone just invited you to a kirtan or just gave you a japa bag, a bag of beads to chant meditation mantras on, and you're like, whoa, okay, cool. Like, how do I consciously approach this? So that's what we will look at today. And I'm probably going to break it up into 2 or 3 parts. But in the first part, what I will discuss is we're going to look at it through a beautiful poem called the Shikshastakam. And this is a poem which is kind of written a couple hundred years ago. And it has a lot of insights into how we approach the whole practice of bhakti, really, in our modern age, in a difficult time, and how we can also approach the holy name. So yeah, there's one verse in this Shikshastakam. It's a beautiful ancient prayer, and it says, Trinadapi sunichena taror api sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. So what does it actually mean? Well, it has quite a deep and profound host of meanings, but the first one we're going to look at is Trinad api sunichena. So Trinad api sunichena means to be more humble than a blade of grass. And that is quite a statement. Why One might say, what does that even mean, to be more humble than a blade of grass? Well, Giriraj Swami has explained very nicely in an article that a grass, like a blade of grass, it gets trampled on and driven over and all of that, and it never even protests. It never even protests. So, that if we can have that kind of attitude towards, what we experience in life, then this will help us to develop the right mentality when we're approaching mantra meditation. So, yeah, humility is a very, very important factor in understanding ourselves spiritually, being able to perceive a spiritual reality, and the power of all right, sorry. So, yeah, humility. So I'm gonna give a few definitions of humility from really wise souls. The first person I'm gonna look at is Bhakti Tirtha Swami. So he's a really cool guru that you could look into. Some profound teachings. If you're interested, I could send you some links. But basically, one thing that he said that I thought was really, really accurate was he said, makes it easy to understand, is that humility does not mean to think of yourself less, but to think less of yourself. Does that make sense to you? So, it means to think less of yourself, not to degrade yourself, but to just not always put yourself in the center of everything. So try and understand, while I'm saying these points, what is the benefit of these points that I'm making in terms of a meditative attitude. Like, how are you going to develop this right mood when you're sitting in a meditation, if that makes any sense, you know? So another thing that he said is, when we lack humility, we develop the tendency to focus on someone else's faults rather than our own. When others try to show us our faults, we immediately see their observations as stemming from their own imperfections and not our own. So that is pretty profound. That actually, when we have a fault finding tendency, it's a product of pride in one sense. So yeah, that's something to sit on and think about. Another thing that he said, a genuinely humble person does not tolerate and repress while maintaining false ego and pride. The person eagerly desires to glorify and respect others. So that's just the internal feeling and mood that this person has most of the time, is to eagerly desire to glorify and respect others. So that will come from reducing a fault finding mentality, definitely, which can become very habitual for some of us, or it can be kind of normalized in terms of like the people that we associate with. But it's also easy to develop mental habits and corrective measures to overcome if we have a fault finding mentality. So definitely, similarly to that, another guru, Kadamba Swami, he says that humility is a quality that is difficult to develop, but at least a person can take a humble position by giving respect and credit to others and by not taking any credit himself. So when people compliment you, you're like, no, no, or you just pass the glories on to your teachers or other people that inspired you. Genuinely in your heart, you're like, just kind of uncomfortable when people are giving you uh, glorifications. So that's humility, definitely. Because you really think that your whatever that they're appreciating is a product of some greater person that you've learned from, or something like that, or from the divine, from God or something. You're not really thinking like, yeah, 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 I know. I know, I'm just so amazing. That's not really humility. So think about what made you and what inspired you, and always give that credit to that. So yeah, I really like that. Another thing that Bhakti Tirtha Swami said when trying to understand humility is that it requires truthfulness. A humble person is truthful, and we can't develop humility if we do not develop truthfulness, if we do not try practice truthfulness. So, honesty grants us a perception of reality, and that means also being very open about our flaws and our mistakes. And it's very endearing. It's endearing, it's trustworthy, and it helps us to develop an honest relationship with our spiritual side. It helps us to be able to acknowledge the things that we need to work on and improve on, and do that for the pleasure of other people that we associate with, co-workers, family members, partners, children. Especially if you have children, it's very important to have these qualities, because kids see much more than you think they do, and they follow much more than you think that they will. And they don't always listen to just what you instruct them, but sometimes they follow without even knowing or consciously habits that you exhibit. So definitely, is a lot of dysfunctional consequences of a lack of truthfulness. And there's a lot of social and relationship and conscious and spiritual benefits from being strong in that department, and being able to acknowledge our flaws, acknowledge our weaknesses, and be honest about things. Just have a good taste for truthfulness in all degrees, in expecting it from others, in seeking it from the things that we buy, the things that we do, the places that we go. We want to know the truth about things because it affects us. So definitely becoming attracted to truthfulness and exhibiting truthfulness is an important aspect of humility. Um, Also, Bhakti Swami explains that we cannot entirely depend on our own insights. Like, that also kind of is an aspect of humility, is to be able to acknowledge that, like, my insights are my opinions and my perspectives, but they're not the all in all, and they're not entirely what I entirely depend on in everything that I do and all the time. Because with that level of humility, that my perspective is limited, my perspective is conditioned, my perspective is maybe not the most educated or the most truthful or the most advanced or the most insightful. You may have your opinion and your perspective and your insight, but you should not only entirely depend on that or think it entirely supreme. A humble person would do research on things and take multiple learned opinions on things and inspiration, and be able to also re-glorify and re-acknowledge those sources of inspiration and learning, and um, that is a very good quality, because it will also bring more transparency and truth into things, and more solid, like factual kind of grasp of things, of reality. So those are some nice things to consider in terms of considering humility, truthfulness, not just entirely depending on our own insights. He also says, like, coming to the supreme while we see that we are incompetent. So being able to sometimes just take that position of like, Jesus, take the wheel, or like, saying a prayer, or acknowledging that like we can't really do something entirely without some divine intervention. Um, that is definitely an aspect of humility, and something that we want to cultivate in our mood when we're approaching, the mantra meditation and the holy name when we're doing japa meditation or kirtan. Definitely, because it will help us get more of the mercy out of that holy name and go deeper in our meditation and have a much more open and powerful relationship. So, yeah, those were a few things from Bhakti Tirtha Swami. I want to jump back to Kadambakananda Swami and what he says. Um, uh, he speaks a lot about how it's an ability to be able to give credit to others and acknowledge their strengths and their good qualities and glorify them. And he also said that humility is a quality where one is ready to see good in others and recognizes that everyone can make a contribution which can be appreciated. So, I mean, on the contrary, a proud person might always try to put themselves in the front and the center, and step in front of people. Maybe also an envious person will behave like this. Um, they cannot uh, acknowledge the strengths and the good potentials and capacities in other people very well, nor do they care. Um, which is not always a good thing, like because when you want something done the best, you want the best person to come forward for it. So considering all factors, you might not always push yourself to the front. So a humble person would be like, you know what, definitely um, Jay has a much better skill in this department, and if you really want the best outcome or the best result for this project or service, you should pick Jay. Thank you for asking me, but I want you to get the best. And by having that level of humility, of being able to acknowledge someone else's capacity and strength and push them forward, definitely so much benefit comes from that for everybody, because we're also able to acknowledge our inspirations and seek ways to improve our own skills and whatever it is that it is. So instead of just being falsely proud. So yeah, that's also honesty. That is also truthfulness and honesty. Uh, and another thing that he says, which is really nice, is that humility is it's a conscious effort. Actually, some people are kind of naturally humble, but still, in certain departments in our life, in certain attitudes that we have towards certain things, developing this attitude of, it's a constant effort, developing humility, and it eventually becomes natural when we cultivate it, but maybe we're not all really conditioned to like be humble by normal society. So and definitely to also acknowledge that there's much further progress we can make in that department. It's not like a black and white thing. Yeah, I'm humble. One could always develop further humility and figure out what level of humility they're on, and probably always find someone more humble than them. So, to a useful degree, we want to develop the quality of humility, and especially so we understand the purpose and the benefit of meditation and what this holy name can do. So Prabhupada is someone else I'm also going to cite on this topic, and Prabhupada also um, said some nice things on humility. He said humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. So it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. And I'm sure we can identify a lot of times things that we can develop a better attitude in, considering those factors. Um, Radhanath Swami also speaks quite frequently on this topic, and what he had to say is that, we also have to understand the difference between humility and low self esteem, because they're not the same thing. And maybe we can think we're cultivating humility and or think someone's humble, but really be identifying more of a low self esteem kind of issue. So it's like he says, humility doesn't mean that, well, everyone is better than me, let them trample on my head in every way. And citing the Bhagavad Gita, he said that Arjuna still fought the war to win, but without false ego. He was doing it for God. So we should not let humility think that humility means incapacitating ourselves and make it not possible for us to pursue our divine mission and execute it, with enthusiasm and determination. Sometimes it's not easy, sometimes it's not necessarily something we want to do or understand fully, but that is always a fruitful purpose, is executing a divine mission. And that is humility, is taking something which is a divine purpose, a divine service, and executing it with full force. And you could start as small as, like, just trying to develop a regular meditation practice, even if that starts with like regular attendance of Kirtan meditation or Japa meditation, because that is the recommended form of meditation for our times. So we're going to get the best results from that. So definitely, like, don't not even try it out. And this is ways in which you can approach it. So just to clarify on the low self-esteem thing, um, the Google definition would be that low self-esteem can cause people to give up their identity and their ability to explore, create, and achieve, while letting others control their thoughts and actions. So, as you can see, low self esteem is something that has negative results. We don't have the confidence or the self belief to express ourselves and exert ourselves in a positive way. We kind of shrink away into ourselves and become kind of impotent, useless. So that is something more of a product of the mode of ignorance. That's cultivating something that would drag us down into a self-defeating kind of mentality. Um, and it's unfortunate that there's so many causes for low self-esteem, and that also on the spiritual path, a lot of people accidentally tend toward this while trying to cultivate humility. But definitely try to avoid that. If you feel that your mood is that you're inhibiting your expression of positive, fruitful ideas and energy to do good things, and you feel that you are letting others control your thoughts and actions in a way which is having a negative impact. I mean, it shouldn't be control, it should be inspiration. That is the impact that other people can have on our consciousness or on our existence that's positive. Not like control, people controlling your thoughts and actions. So that definitely comes from a lack of self-belief, a lack of self-ability. So yeah, like he said, it doesn't mean that everyone is better than me, let them trample on my head in every way. You still do your duty. So we have to be careful, because, as I said, the Trinada Pisunichena is all about, to be more humble than a blade of grass, where people are trampling on him and he does not protest. However, it's all about time, place, and circumstance. If you have faith that you are contacting a divine presence when you meditate, and that you're allowing this divine presence to bring positive, manifestive, loving, protective energy into your daily life, then that means there's less of a reliance on your own efforts to get through things. And that's where the humility kind of comes from, you know. It's not that by my own endeavor I'm going to control every situation and the outcome of it, and it's so much anxiety and stress which could come from that. You know, it's like, as I said, you know, like a little bit of like Jesus take the wheel, um allowing some divine intervention, and that is the mood that we can also approach, you know, this holy mantra, this holy name in when we meditate is like, please, help. I believe that you have a plan, that you are interacting in some way, that the things I'm experiencing have a purpose, or that if it's just the material energy like swooshing me around in my life, that you can help me get through this. So you want to acknowledge a personality that's invested, it that it's represented, or that exists, uh, really exists in this beautiful mantra, in this beautiful holy name, and have faith in his or her ability, um, while you're saying it, while you're hearing it, while you're experiencing it. Um, so if that kind of makes sense, it's not to incapacitate yourself or become unproductively useless, but to still have this tolerance, and this faith. Um, so yeah, another thing that Kadamba Swami said is that humility grants us perception of God. He spoke about this on quite a few occasions, and if you could just take like the time to try and understand how that works, it's basically like that as well, you know. We have to understand ourselves in our most natural and neutral state of being. That's like that I am that you can contact when you're meditating, when you're in a deep state of meditation and high self-awareness, is understanding ourselves as a divine soul, as a servant of the divine, as a servant of God. That is our like neutral, most inner natural identity and natural way of existence, a pure consciousness and way of existence, in servant, a servant of the divine, a servant of God. So when we are humble, then we can understand this, you know, not trying to be the controller, trying to be the supreme person, um, uh, allowing, you know, attention, like energy flows where attention goes. So if you don't acknowledge something or consider something, it will be very hard for you to perceive it as a reality. But if you're thinking about something, it's very easy to see the things which justify that, you know, it is what you're thinking. You kind of look for those kinds of justifications. Or sometimes it's just like, if you don't think about the things that you have to be grateful for in your life, you won't know them. You won't even notice like things that happen in your life that you can be grateful for, because your attention is just not going there, you know. So similarly, with a humble attitude that, you know, if there is a divine kind of uh, higher power in this world and in my life, um, that I should have a mood of like servitorship and humility towards, um, the, uh, we can start to actually perceive. We will be able to see God more and more, like, and that's pretty amazing. So humility is it something, a tool which can grant us perception of God, and like, that's pretty cool. Because everyone's trying to figure him out. We can't really understand God, as I said, when we're trying to be the ultimate controller of everything. You just have this a clashing mentality with the understanding of God by trying to be the controller of everything. You cannot control everything. And we should not mistake our minute independence with being the controller and ignoring the divine. So, yes, we have some minute independence. Not everything in our lives is completely controlled. Um, but that doesn't mean that we are the supreme controller. It just means that we do have some minute independence, like a little bit of sway in the outcome of things, and where our energy, attention goes. The decisions that we make can affect slightly differing outcomes. Um, but we shouldn't use that independence to ignore the spiritual reality that we are living with and through all the time. That minute independence is misused, not acknowledging the spiritual reality of our daily lives. It's misused. So, it's like you could ignore it, but it doesn't mean it's there. And it doesn't mean that there's no consequences for ignoring it, which are not benefiting you or anybody. So just having a grapple of reality and just having the balls and the strength to just deal with that, and that's also humility. So yeah, a little bit of a wobbly start there, but I wanted to kind of go over some of the things I was gonna elaborate on, and how can we approach, meditation, mantra meditation, kirtan, japa, how to approach the mystical, magical, holy mantra, and we're looking at the Shikshastikam, this amazing, beautiful poem written by Lord Chaitanya, and we're looking at some of the points in there. We're looking at humility, we're looking at a servant mentality, and I think in the next session I'll speak a little bit about like tolerance, a little bit about tolerance. How does tolerance help us to approach this? Well, it's a useful tool to approach it. And yes, some sankalpa, or like things we can focus our mind on when we're doing the meditation, and as well as just some other factors that we can include in that. Okay,